Ancient Egypt, home of towering pyramids, mighty pharaohs, and some of the strangest food traditions you've ever heard of. From sacred feasts for the gods to surprising dishes you'd never expect, their diet was more than just survival. It was a way of life, filled with mystery, rituals, and even the first fast food deliveries. But what did the pharaohs really eat? How did farmers survive over the land? And could ancient Egyptians actually be the world's first beer lovers? Stick around, because what you're about to learn will change everything you thought you knew about history. Welcome to a journey through time, where we uncover the delicious secrets of the past. Let's dive in. Imagine walking the streets of ancient Egypt. The golden sun shines over the mighty Nile, priests chant in towering temples, and farmers work tirelessly in the fields. But have you ever wondered what was daily life like for the people of this great civilization? And more importantly, what did they eat? Forced daily life in ancient Egypt. At the top of society sat the pharaoh, the god-king of Egypt. He ruled over millions, wore the most luxurious clothes, and adorned himself with gold and precious stones. The priests just below him held immense power, controlling religious rituals and temple wealth. But the real heartbeat of Egypt, the workers, artisans and farmers, the builders of pyramids, the weavers of fine linen, the bakers of daily bread. While nobles lived in grand villas, most Egyptians lived in simple mud brick homes, sleeping on reed mats under the desert sky. And hygiene surprisingly advanced. Both men and women shaved their heads to stay cool, wore wigs and applied perfumed oils to protect their skin from the scorching sun. And let's not forget the famous black coal eyeliner, not just for beauty, but to protect their eyes from glare and infections. Food of the pharaohs and commoners. Now let's step into an ancient Egyptian feast. The pharaoh and nobles dined like royalty, because, well, they were. Their tables were filled with roasted meats, fresh fish from the Nile, and even delicacies like honey-glazed figs and dates. But for the common people, food was simpler. Their diet relied on three key staples: bread, beer, and vegetables. Yes, beer was a daily drink, even for children, but it wasn't the beer we know today. It was thick, nutritious, and full of energy. Bread was the foundation of every meal. Baked in clay ovens, it was often coarse and filled with bits of sand. Ouch, not great for the teeth. On the side, lentils, onions, and cucumbers from their fertile lands. Meat and fish? Only for those who could afford it. While the rich feasted on beef and lamb, the poor relied on fish from the Nile, salted and dried to last longer. And what about dessert? Egyptians had a sweet tooth. Dates, figs, and honey were nature's candy, often mixed into pastries and cakes for celebrations. So whether you were a mighty pharaoh dining in luxury or a hard-working farmer sharing a humble meal, food and daily life in ancient Egypt were deeply connected to the great Nile that sustained them all. The mighty Nile, the lifeblood of ancient Egypt. Without it there would be no pyramids, no temples, no great civilization. But how did the Egyptians farm this land thousands of years ago? And once they grew their crops, how did they cook and eat their food? Let's step back in time to uncover the daily life of ancient Egyptian farmers and their kitchens. 3. How the Egyptians farmed the Nile. Imagine living in a land surrounded by nothing but scorching desert. And then, once a year, the river rises, transforming the dry earth into a paradise of food and life. This was the gift of the Nile. The Egyptians depended entirely on the Nile's seasonal flooding to fertilize their fields with rich black silt. No flood, no food. That's why they worshipped Hapi, the god of the Nile, offering prayers and rituals to ensure the river's return. But farming wasn't easy. With simple tools like wooden plows, flint sickles, and the shaduf, a device to lift water from the river, farmers worked from sunrise to
sunset, growing the crops that fed an entire civilization. So what did they grow? Grain was king, especially wheat and barley, the foundation for making bread and beer. But Egyptians didn't just rely on grains. Their fields were full of lentils, onions, garlic, cucumbers, and even fruits like figs, dates, and pomegranates. And while the pharaoh and nobles enjoyed the best harvests, the farmers, who toiled under the scorching sun, were paid in food, beer, and clothing rather than coins. Once the crops were harvested, it was time to cook. But without modern stoves or ovens, how did the Egyptians prepare their meals? Bread was the heart of Egyptian cuisine. Made from emmer wheat, it was baked in clay ovens, sometimes flavored with honey or dates. But there was a problem: sand. Grinding grain with stone tools meant tiny bits of grit got into the dough, leading to some very painful dental problems.
Aside from bread, Egyptians loved stews. Lentils, chickpeas, and vegetables were slow cooked in clay pots over open flames, often seasoned with coriander, cumin, and salt. And what about meat? Fish was a major source of protein, often dried or salted to last longer. But for the rich, feasts of roasted beef, duck, and even exotic game like gazelle. Now let's talk about sweets. Honey was a luxury, used to sweeten pastries and drinks. Figs, dates, and even lotus seeds were eaten as nature's candy, no processed sugar needed. And how did they eat? Forget forks and knives. Egyptians mostly ate with their hands or used bread to scoop food. Spoons, made of wood or ivory, were used for soups and porridge. But forks? Nope, those came much later in history. From farming the fertile banks of the Nile to preparing meals with simple tools, food was at the heart of Egyptian life. It brought families together, powered the workers who built the pyramids, and even played a role in their spiritual beliefs. What ancient Egyptian food would you want to try? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you love history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more journeys into the past. Food wasn't just for survival in ancient Egypt, it was a gateway to the gods, a way to honor the dead, and even a part of the afterlife itself. But wait until you hear about the bizarre foods they ate and how food delivery worked in the land of the Pharaohs. In ancient Egypt, food wasn't just for the living, it was a sacred gift for the gods. Every day, priests carefully prepared ritual offerings of bread, beer, vegetables, and meat, laying them before statues of their deities. This wasn't just symbolic, Egyptians believed their gods consumed the spiritual essence of these foods. What was on the divine menu? The gods were offered only the finest foods: honey, wine, fresh bread, and even roasted meats. In return, the people prayed for prosperity, protection, and a good flood from the Nile. But it wasn't just the gods who enjoyed grand feasts. Egyptians loved celebrations. During festivals like the beautiful Feast of the Valley, families gathered to honor their ancestors with lavish meals, music, and dancing. Even the poorest Egyptians joined in, sharing food and drinks under the stars. And what about the dead? Egyptians believed that in the afterlife, they would still need food. That's why tombs were stocked with jars of grain, dried meats, and even clay models of servants making food, so that the deceased would never go hungry in the next world. Beer wasn't just a drink in ancient Egypt, it was a daily essential. Even children drank a low-alcohol version. Made from barley and flavored with dates, beer was safer than water and even used as currency to pay workers. 2. Birds were a delicacy, even pigeons. You might think of pigeons as city pests today, but in ancient Egypt they were a delicacy. Ducks, geese, and even quails were roasted, stuffed, or dried to preserve them for later feasts. 3. They ate crocodiles. Yes, crocodile meat was on the menu. Some Egyptians believed eating these fearsome creatures could give them strength. But don't worry, only the wealthiest could afford such exotic meals. 4. What the pyramids reveal about their diet. Think pyramid builders lived on scraps. Think again. Recent discoveries show that workers were well fed with bread, fish, dates, and even beef, a rare luxury for commoners. 5. Ancient food delivery. It was a thing. Did you know that the Pharaoh's palace had its own version of food delivery? Servants rushed meals from kitchens to the royals, while markets allowed wealthy Egyptians to have fresh produce brought straight to their homes. From sacred offerings to bizarre delicacies, food shaped the daily life, religion, and even afterlife of ancient Egyptians. Which of these food facts surprised you the most? Drop a comment below. And if you love history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more epic stories from the past.